Welcome to Growth Minded Conversations. We're your hosts, Amy Diestelkamp and Paula Grimes from Growth Minded Talent Solutions, where we talk about the real leadership and hiring decisions behind building a growing business. Last week, we were talking about the decision tree, kind of came up in our last topic. And I thought we'd dive in a little bit more to one, what is a decision tree? And two, how do leaders use it? This is something I find really helpful. It's definitely helped me with putting a visual around things. And I think it could be helpful for other growing leaders out there.
And we had brought it up because Susan Scott brings it up in Fierce Conversations. Yet it really helped me put some clarity around making decisions in business because there are so many decisions in every single business that are made day in and day out. And it is like, who has the authority to make those decisions? And there's been a couple times in my career where I've made decisions I wasn't authorized to make and I overstepped. And I didn't realize until I overstepped that it wasn't my decision to make. It's not a conversation a lot of times that we intentionally have up front. We just figure it out as we go. And because we're figuring it out as we go, I find people, if they're less assertive, will ask permission to make decisions all the time. We want people to have the authority that's right for them. I don't want my employees coming to me with every single little decision when they have the authority to make it on their own. Or if you're a more assertive personality, you tend to overstep and then you get your hand slapped because it was like, hey, wait a minute, that wasn't your decision to make.
It's that concept of ownership that can kind of feel very vague, right? We constantly hear people say, at least I do, I want them to own the role. Okay, what does ownership look like? Right? It's making decisions and understanding enough about your role to be able to make good informed decisions for yourself, for the role, for the company. That's a big piece of ownership, at least. The decision tree gives guidelines for new leaders and new people in a role to understand that these are the kinds of decisions you will own in the role that you have on the team. So the decision tree it's a graphic, right? That it's a picture of a tree. And all the different parts of the trees relate back to different kinds of decisions that can be made within a business.
So think about a tree, a visual of a tree, and what is below ground is you have your root system, right? Which is really stabilizing the tree. It's where the tree gets a lot of their nutrients. It's where the tree is solid to the ground. It's that really strong foundation. Then you have the trunk of the tree. Then you have the branches of the tree, and then you have the leaves of the tree. So when we talk about decisions, we talk about root decisions, trunk decisions, branch decisions, and leaf decisions.
So where do we start here? Should we start with leaf decisions or root decisions?
I always start with root decisions because if you were to chop the roots off of a tree, that tree would die. Like no ifs, ands, or buts, that tree would die. So the root decisions in our business are those really big decisions that should only be made by the business owner because if they're not made accurately, it can detrimentally affect the business. And it's not necessarily that they make these all alone. They may ask for input from other people within their organization. Yet they're the final decision maker because whatever the consequences are of that decision affect the organization they've built.
What's an example of a root decision that you've had to make as a business owner yourself?
A great question, actually. And you caught me off guard.
That doesn't happen often.
It's funny because as you said that, the example that came to mind is not something that I've made a decision on. But to me, if I was the private company and thinking about going public, I would not want any of my people making that decision for me. That is a decision that I make about my organization.
And that decision, right? Private company going public, or that foundational decision, it changes the structure of the business. It changes the way we talk about profit, budgets, finance. Like it can affect people's compensation. It can affect how we grow in the future. Like that decision ripples through everything else in the tree.
Yes, it changes so many things within our organization. Yeah.
A decision that came up on my team a few years ago, my old team, was the owner of the team decided to physically move locations. We moved out into our own office space. And that was like a root decision, right? It changed people's commutes. It changed our monthly finances. It changed the fact that like everybody could come back into the office. This was shortly after COVID. So, people had been working remotely. Now we were all coming back into the office because there was nice new space, but it changed a lot of things. Yes, there were conversations that were had ahead of time, but ultimately, if the team leader did not want to do that, we weren't going to make that change would have never happened. So root decisions, they're foundational, they're going to change and ripple through the entire company in a lot of different ways. And a lot of times they're really hard to walk back if you make the wrong decision there. That's why only leaders should be making these kinds of decisions.
And they're often making them on their own. Again, maybe not without input from different resources, yet they're making these on their own.
Trunk decisions. What would be a trunk decision?
So trunk decisions are decisions that, again, the organizational ownership should be making, or sometimes it's the department director is making, because it affects the department or affects the organization. It depends the hierarchy of the organization. They're ultimately making the decision, but there's a lot more collaboration around it. They're getting input from other people. People have a say in the conversation, yet they are still somewhat the final decision maker, but it can often be more of a group decision. Or we're given permission to make that decision, but it's not a decision that we're making without oversight from somebody above.
You might make that decision as the department head and then ultimately have to report back before maybe pulling the trigger or shortly after pulling the trigger to say, this is what happened. This is the decision I made. This is, what next steps will be because.
Okay. So the difference between this and a branch decision, because you just described a branch decision, the
Okay.
difference between a trunk decision and a branch decision is you get permission before you make the decision. So the branch decision is I made the decision and I brought it back to you because you need to be aware that I made this decision. So I have the authority to make the decision, but I want to keep people in the know of the decisions I've made.
So going back to trunk decision, you think of a time where I know you've been a COO before. I know you've been business partners before. You've led parts of companies and even entire companies in your tenure. What are trunk decisions that you've had to make?
It's maybe hiring, right? Like I know it's time to hire. I know our financials can do it, yet I am not going to just go out and hire without talking to the people above me and making sure that they're okay with my decision to hire. And part of that is I don't know what's going on in their world, right? There may be something going on in their world I'm unaware of that's going to affect our financials or going to affect the department I'm running. And so by going to them first, one, I clear that so that we're all on the same page. And then two, they're also very aware of how I'm moving forward.
All right. And branch decisions. We've kind of gotten into branch decisions already, right? You're making those decisions on your own and then just reporting to the powers that be afterwards to keep them in the loop. What are types of branch decisions that someone might make in their role?
So think about we had a really unhappy client. I made some decisions on how to make that client happy. I make that decision, I make that client happy, and yet I still go and report back, hey, this is what happened. This is what I did about it to solve the problem. I want to keep you in the know. Because if that problem ever blows up bigger than that, I want them to know that. Or if I've somehow given some company resources away, I want them to know that. They deserve to know that. So branch decisions are, yeah, I have the authority to solve this problem. However, I need to solve it right now. Yet the way I solved it or the situation itself, it deserves other people knowing what happened.
Yeah. And that empower it's funny, you say you use the customer service, and that reminds me of, I think it's the Ritz-Carlton as like a brand, as a company. They give all of their employees at their hotels like a stipend, basically. I think it's like a monthly amount where they're like, handle guests' concerns, make their experience great. You could spend a certain amount of discretionary funds at your discretion to accomplish this. But it's their way as a company culturally to say, like, you own this decision. We know you're going to spend this money. We're okay with you spending this money. Go make these decisions for the company and everything. As leadership, that's how you empower your people to be able to own branch decisions and to feel comfortable, right? Saying right up front, if it's under $500 or X amount, whatever, like, you have the ability to make that decision and pull the trigger.
So if you think about that example for a reason, for a minute, that could be a branch decision or a leaf decision. If I'm giving you discretionary funds and I'm saying, go spend this money, do whatever you need to do. And at the end of the month, I want you to report back to me how you've used these funds and what the situations were. That's actually a branch decision. But if I'm giving you these funds and I say, I don't care what it is, you don't need to report back to me, that's a leaf decision. So the leaf
Ah.
decisions are all the decisions we make where we don't need to tell anybody that we've made that decision.
So this is how leaders can set their people up to know exactly where their decision-making ability lies. You don't need to report back to me. You have the ability to use the funds. This is in your purview, in your job role. Move forward accordingly. Leaf decisions all day long. To
Yes.
me, now we're at branch decisions. Now we're at roots.
And by having this conversation up front with our employees, it starts to give boundaries. It's not that everything's going to be crystal clear. It starts to give boundaries of what you have the authority to do and what you don't have the authority to do in your position. And it also creates a language. So when something happens, you can go to your supervisor and say, hey, you want me to handle X? Is that a trunk decision? Is that a branch decision, or is that a leaf decision? And by their response, I know how I need to approach the solution to that, right? Do I need to go get permission before I act? Do I need to act and then report back? Or do I just need to go do and not tell anybody about it?
That's a great point there. So it helps in so many ways. It gives clarity filtering up the chain, and it also gives clarity filtering back down again. So everybody's has a working language around it. Can you tell us about teams that, in your experience, when this has been done really well?
Remember, when I say it's done really well, it doesn't mean we don't have any gray areas or unclarity. That's the thing. It's not going to solve every problem. It's going to solve 95% of them. And
Like,
then it just makes those other conversations easier. Hey, George, that was actually a trunk decision and you just treated it like a branch decision. Hey, in the future, please treat that one like a trunk decision.
use the framework, but you've also got to really adopt that vocabulary into your organization. So that way everybody gets on the same page. We all use it fluidly on a regular basis as we're talking through next steps, projects, issues that come up. We're all using it to get on the same page consistently.
Yes. And it takes the emotion out of the conversation. If somebody oversteps their authority, it's not an angry conversation or why did you do that or right. It's hey, I think you misunderstood. That was a trunk decision, not a branch decision. Or if somebody keeps coming to you and asking for permission and you're like, oh my gosh, you have the authority to make these decisions. It's really easy to say, you don't need to come to me and ask me for permission. Those are leaf decisions. You've got this.
So yeah, if you are leading others, if you are growing a team, growing a business, and you are finding that your conversations with your team are swinging in one direction or the other, right? People are overstepping or they are not owning the decisions that they should be making. Try having a decision tree conversation with your team and see if that doesn't change the way people approach their decisions. All right. Thank you so much, Paula. Join us this time next week for another growth minded conversation.
All right, growth minded leaders, that's a wrap on today's episode. We hope this sparked some fresh ideas and fueled your drive to build, lead, and grow with purpose. And if something we shared helped shift your perspective, we'd love for you to leave a review. It helps us reach more business builders just like you. Better yet, share this with someone on your team or in your inner circle who's ready to level up their leadership game. Until next time, keep leading boldly, hiring wisely, and training with intention. You're not just building a business, you're shaping a legacy.